Joining in, and without wasting much of your time, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar organized by Layer 3 with the theme Data Analytics and the Modern Organization. We have a lot of notable people here, people that are just going to shed more light on data analytics and the modern organization. We have our panelists, Hitachi Kala, author, Mukuva, Antonia from Layer 3, then Tausif Syed. So first on our agenda, we are going to have a welcome speech by Shate Kakwa, Executive Director, Layer 3. So you can go ahead, Mr. Kakwa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Yes, thank you so much, Pamela. Thank you, Pamela. I would like to thank everyone for accepting this invitation and coming, joining the call to have this discussion with us. The aim of putting this together is to emphasize the role that data and analytics play in decision-making and in our daily lives. We all are a testimony to the growth of the use of data and the growth of internet-related businesses, and we are a contributor to that. We actively contribute to increasing growing the amount of footprint of data footprint that we have and the amount of data that is exchanged and created. As a result, I mean, a lot of trends, a lot of insights can be generated from the data that we use and we consume through our activities, you know, and the ability of businesses to be able to interpret this data and generate information about trends and consumer behavior will influence how the quality of that decision making and the success of these businesses, you know. So the role of analytics in modern organizations is a big one, yet it is still underestimated. We have lots of organizations with data that are not properly utilized or indeed even properly captured. You know, and data analytics is a key to unlock this value and how we use data that we possess within our organizations and which is also freely available through multiple sources. You know, so we have brought together a team of experts from various sectors to share their views and testimonies of how, you know, we can use data to help individuals like yourselves and your businesses to plan and strategize. So we hope you enjoyed this session and learn a lot from what our panelists have to say. Indeed, we'll be taking feedback from you during the course of the seminar. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Mr. Shate Kakwa, the ED Layer 3. So next on the agenda, we have our keynote speaker taking the stage. We have Tausif Syed. He's a business unit head, big data and data analytics buyer. So over to you, Tausif.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, great. I would like to share my screen. Before that, I'll just give you a brief introduction of what I do. So I head SPI Solution, Big Data and Data Analytics Unit. We are responsible for bringing data analytics as a culture in EMEA region. We do wide scale of projects. So it can be right from starting from a data lake or data warehousing, right from there to doing AI and ML-based analytics for our customers. We cover a wide region, we cover multiple countries together. And today's objective for me would be introducing a new phase of data, or it's a new phase of world itself, the digital world, and how it's influencing us and how organization can be data driven. I'll be sharing my screen. Let me know if it's visible for everybody. So where do I have share option? Okay, it says I have been disabled for sharing my screen. Can somebody allow me? Guys, I'll join. I think I have a permission thing to be done. I'll join again. Just give me a minute. Sorry for that, guys. Am I audible, visible?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. Okay, great. Let me know if my screen is visible to you guys.
Yes, it's visible. You can go
Great.
ahead.
Okay, guys. So we're gonna, the topic which I have named is Data Safari. So it's a journey to be data driven. Now, the main thing today on the agenda will be what's the digital world, what's big data, what is it all about? Second thing will be how psychologically we are built to take decision now as a human. And then we are going to discuss how that can be related to the company objectives or the organization which are trying to inculcate, bring in the data-driven methodology. And then final would be, we would discuss how we can actually go to be a data-driven organization. So guys, if you look at this, we are living into a data world where you see that there is all like 1.2 trillion searches are made on a yearly basis on Google. Every minute, we have like almost 31 million messages on FB. 5 quintillion bytes are generated by smart devices on a daily. Now, what I mean by smart devices, these are devices which we use on a daily purpose, something like Fitbit for heart rate management and all those kind of devices. It is said that we generate 1.7 MB of data. So like on an average, any person across the globe generates the data. We would have almost $42 billion kind of economy generated just by big data analytics. And if you can imagine the kind of data which is generated by YouTube, it's 300 new hours per minute is added to YouTube. So that's like, it has more than 1 billion GB of data on its server. So that's the data which we are living into. That's the data which we have around us. Now, how does that influence us? We're going to discuss that. And how do we make decisions? So the old way of thinking and making decision for a human was all based on things like experience, that the experience was all based on, like, let's say, the schooling, the family background, the culture, the place we belong to. And the decision which we made was intuition based or gut based, and some were impulsive. Others, for business centric people, they are derived by client interaction, they are derived by the end user needs. And then a little bit of data used to take, like we used to consider the data, and we review facts, and we take information, and then we do decision. But the new way for any organization to go decision based approach is like, it's completely combination of all of these three, where we get the data, we collect facts, we believe in our experiences, but we also consider our client focus, client needs. But then the most important aspect comes is like, based on the data, we make decision. Just look at this. So today, as a consumer, this is what any organization typically looks at you. They categorize you. So I'm talking about organization which spend hugely, humongously on big data analytics. So let's say like there is a typical user, Anna Anderson. So they have the gender information, they have the location of her, they have the profession. Then what else they have is her brand preference. So she prefers Pinterest and Spotify. They also have what kind of apps she uses and what's her preferred app. They also understand her wants and needs. So let's say like she preferred a healthy lifestyle, she preferred work-life balance. Now, these are something which are collected not just via something you input as part of your survey, but your overall social media input. Also kind of social media inputs when you give, when you're talking or interacting. And then there is also the smart devices which are generating these data. So also what you have is a complete profile when it comes to tech-based usage, like how much she is an internet-friendly person, what's her social media visibility, what kind of preference she has when it goes to online shopping, is she gadget-friendly, does she prefer playing games? So when you categorize this all and think that you are a bank or you're a retail, you want to target the customer, you could easily choose the channel which would be best suited to get new offers for Anna. So let's say like, I'll just give you an example and you could relate to it. So if I find her a gadget friendly person, and then also I find her that she prefers healthy lifestyle, which was one of her wants and needs, then she is an ideal customer if I'm a banking customer for a new retail credit card, which we are launching just for the specific users which are more into gadgets. So the offers and the association for the bank with these kind of brands is also very important. So this is how the new modern era is affecting, and this is how us, like we human, are being analyzed by the companies across using the data which we generate. So that's something is going to come up, and that's how different organizations are going to spend more and more data so that they can be more and more closer to business, the customers. Now, when I talk about any company objective or any organization, it has basically three objectives. First, let's reduce the operational cost. Second, how can we increase our profit? And third would be, of course, with profit, I also want to increase my revenue. If we align these three, and then we think about how data can be participating and how data is crucial for this kind of thing. So let's look at the survey and what's happening in the big data industry. The major four industries which are investing in data are banking, manufacturing, professional services, and federal government. If you look at the numbers, these four industry itself contributed $81 billion in 2018. And it is expected that their revenue is to be grown by 13% on an average by just investing in big data analytics. So these are the organizations which are leading the big data analytics. If you look at what is surrounded to us, you can see that we have Amazons, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have other applications. So the moment we switch on, we keep ourselves engaged with them for a longer period of time. This is all due to data-driven approach which they have. Every other consumer banking, every other retail distribution wants to come as close and as intimate to the customer so that the offering is more personalized. Now, this is something organization wants to reach. So first of all, they want to start something where most of organizations are there is on the cost reduction. What is this? This is where they have KPI-based standard reporting system. What is the next step for these kind of organization? They want to go and have centralized storage of data. Let's say they want to talk about business intelligence. They want more than operational reporting, strategic dashboarding. The culture where the analytics kicks in is the self-service analytics culture. What happens here is the data analytics, or let's say the data is more driven by business, less by IT. So the business decides what they want to see. The business decides what analysis they want to do. Business decides how they want to go about analytics. And the final stage, the most value-driven approach is like your entire business strategy or your entire business goal is driven by data. Your modules, your new offerings, your new customer offering, or let's say new marketing plans is all driven by data. So that's the pyramid of organization in a data-driven culture, or let's say value-driven culture. Now that's there, right? We understood how organizations can be data-driven. What we want to focus is like how data works. Now I've tried to keep it simple. I've tried to keep it simple so that we can understand. So there are sources of data. Now, if you look at the traditional sources, these are sources which generate data. Let's say like we go to banking, we do a transaction, that's a source of data where transaction gets generated. And if you look at other sources of data where, let's say the call which you make, that's also a traditional source of data we call CDRs. Also the videos which we post on our social media, those are also the typical source of data. Now, what was a traditional approach? The traditional approach about data was like you get the data, you extract the data. So the ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. So you extract, you make the data meaningful, and then you load the data. And typically it was loaded in a data warehouse. Now, we will not get into the detailed nitty-gritty or technical understanding of what exactly is the difference between these two. I just kept this for us to understand that how data works. So let's say you get the source, you bring it in, you store it somewhere, and then after once it's stored, you start doing the analytics on it. What is a modern way? As the data influx over last 5 years, or let's say last decade, has increased, because we have got all kind of sources. We have smart devices, we have social media, we have videos, and everything coming on a real time. The approach for data has changed. Now people don't talk about having a data warehouse. People talk about, I need everything about a customer. Later on, I'll decide whether I need to create a separate data warehouse to focus on certain needs to be addressed from a customer perspective. But the end part is still the same, right? Where they want to do data science and advanced analytics. Now, we will get into data science. We'll discuss this data science as part of the panel's discussion, but I would just say, just move ahead and talk about what kind of challenges in general the companies face. So when a company start, or let's say organizations start, when in terms of their data journey, they keep themselves limited to traditional repositories. So let's say, like, they will say, oh, we do data analytics, we do BI, but we do it on our ERP database, like typical, or CRM database. Whereas, and it is limited to IT users, or limited to certain power user to access the data. The business users or any other user within the organization is not capable of accessing that data. Whereas the ideal scenario says that data should be accessible to all. What is the second challenge in the data-driven journey? The ungoverned, unknown data environments. What happens is, like, let's take an example of bank. Bank will have multiple applications, or any other retail organization, it will have multiple applications generating data. But this is a siloed approach, because what happens, the data will be generated and it will be stored in multiple places. We don't know how these data is correlated. To be data driven, we need a complete awareness of what is our data environment, where does the data reside, and how it is correlated. I'll give you a typical example of a customer. So let's say, like, I want to create an offer for a customer. Let's go back to the slide which we discussed initially. Let me go back. So let's take an example. We have this data for a customer, right? This all data is getting generated differently at different places. So like the preference of internet, the preference of social media, the preference of online shopping. The online shopping is getting collected by the debit or card transaction done by the customer. The gadget usage is getting collected by the Android usage or the app usage, which is done on the mobile. The game's preference is getting collected by third-party agency, which is submitting us the data. So to come up with a centralized, uniform, let's say, a profile of a customer, we had to go through multiple applications which were generating the data for the same user. So I'll go back to the main slide now. When these are ungoverned, when these are not known, then we have issue. Then we cannot be data-driven. Now, one more issue that is the C, I would say, in part of data-driven journey is like people do data analytics, but what happens is like there are, like, let's say there is a BI department which is specifically working only for the retail part of it. It's not working for the consumer, or let's say it's not working for the strategic part. So the siloed approach for having the professional, let's say, the people who are working on it, or the techniques what are using, these are siloed in an organization. They are not centralized under one strategy. They are not coming under one umbrella. So that's one of the typical issues when a company wants to be data driven. Let's take an example of a company of like 10,000 odd employees. It's going to take a while for them to completely bring in an analytics unit which is centralized, and then it's supporting the rest of the departments within the umbrella. One more issue with data-driven journey is the slow deployment. Now, data projects like data warehouse, data lake, these are time-consuming projects. And the insights, let's say, the creation itself takes a year or two sometimes, and then the value in terms of the insight to come out of this, it takes some more time because it becomes more and more complex. So the slow deployment and the insight to business is also one of the challenges faced across the globe due to data driven. Hence, different companies come up with better strategy for insights, the agile approach, and the approach with modern tools, and then the betterment in terms of storage and doing transactions. That's all which is possible, and which is towards alignment of making the deployment faster for the business to get access to the data and insights. And one final thing which every organization will have is like the ROI, or let's say the budget required for doing. Of course, becoming data driven is something which will need good amount of investment in the data initiative, but that can be something which could be thought against the ROI, which definitely needs prioritization. The prioritization of choosing what is the good step to choose a good project or good initiative to take to start with the journey, and later on move ahead on the longer part of it. These are typical challenges faced by different organizations in terms of their data journey. I'm going to quickly move and how the data journey looks for an organization, how they can go about it. So first of all, what any organization can do is start with a discovery. So let's assess the current state. Now, what do you mean by assessing the current state? Hello? Okay. So what do you mean by assessing the current state is like, we talk about our business goal, we talk about our business needs, we talk about how analytics or how data is going to be adding benefits to us. We also bring in multiple stakeholders, align, so have a centralized vision. Second thing is like strategize and plan. Now, when you talk about strategize and plan, there are two plans being data driven. One is the cultural change which you have to bring, and then there is a technical aspect of it. So once you have completely identified in the discovery what are the gaps, then you have to create a plan or strategy which is around defining a cultural change, which takes a while, and then it's also about building a technical, or let's say an environment to support data within the organization. Once you are done with creating a roadmap, once you are done with creating prioritization, the next important step for you would be designing and architecting. Now, when I mean by designing and architecting, generally in terms of data, it means it's more or less about a data warehouse, data mart, or data lake. But on the other side, it's also about data governance program. When you design an architect, the most important thing is you should think about scalability, think about 5-year plan. That's going to be very important how you go about your journey within the organization for being data driven. Then comes the part where you start working on integrating the data, bringing the data together. Now that's the one part of it where you just start collecting the data. One of the important part is like, based on your end usage, you have to focus on how do you transform your data. Also the quality aspect of your data, the other aspects which are related to data like storage, and then it's also associated like what kind of historical data we want to store. So those all aspects become important. That's where you start creating your pipelines and workflow. Once your data is being integrated, transformed, and stored, then the organization can start looking at business intelligence, where you start building strategic KPI-based dashboards or reports, which help organization to make faster decisions. What happens next? What is the journey where people are moving into, where organizations are spending a lot of time, is the advanced analytics. Now, you don't, when you're human based, you still do a BI dashboarding based on experience and based on understanding what my end user want. But then now with advanced analytics, with the statistical techniques, and with unlimited data available, you can let machine learning, you can let NLP, or let's say, you can let this algorithm do their magic and come up with some input for us, which we never thought of, which we couldn't have found with our human eye. That's there. So that's the next step. And then as a part of an organization being data driven, you always keep optimizing. You always come up with better tools. You can always upgrade your existing tools. Those all exist. So that's the typical journey for an organization to be data driven. I'm more than happy to answer questions from here onwards. Hello.
Okay, thank you so much, Tausif. Thank you so much for this. So for the audience, if you have questions, you could start directing them to the Q&A section. So thank you very much for your presentation, Tausif. So we'll be moving along really quickly. Next on the agenda, we have the panel session. So unfortunately, one of our panelists will not be able to make it, but we have Tausif as one of our panelists, Tausif Said as one of our panelists. We have Otto Mukuva and we have Antonia from layer 3. So I'll just be going around with the questions. Then please note that for the members of the audience, if you have questions, you could direct it to the Q&A section. You could just locate that and direct your questions there. We will attend to them immediately we're done with this panel session. So the first question goes to Antonia. Hello, Antonia.
Hi, Pamela.
Okay. So the first question is for you. And now you're just going to let us know, what role does data management play in analytics to drive business growth? So if you could.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pamela, for your question. So I mean, with what Tausif has said during this presentation, I mean, it's not difficult to see how data management or how we manage data is a key driver for data analytics. So firstly, let's start with looking at what data management is. So what is data management? I mean, very generally put, it's just the process of ingesting data, so taking data in, storing it, organizing it, and maintaining the data created or collected by any organization. And today, more and more, we see how data pours into organizations from multiple sources. I mean, from operational and transactional systems to sensors to scanners. I mean, smart devices, text, video, you name it. Data is coming into organizations from multiple sources. And this opens the conversation around how this data should be accessed, integrity, and data governance in general. So data management in this context is a very crucial step, is the first step to employing effective data analytics, as it leads to important insights that add value to your organization and improve your bottom line. With effective data management, people across organizations can find and access trusted data for their queries. You know, when DM is done right, when data management is done right, the benefits to analytics and the business is enormous. It's huge. When DM is done right, we're speaking to visibility. Some of the benefits we'll get will be visibility, reliability, security, scalability, you know, and just to speak on all of these components or some of these components very generally and highly put, you see, for visibility, data management will increase how you see the data. It increases your visibility into your organization's data access, you know, making organizations understand where data is and making their data more organized and making the organizations productive and allowing employees to have access. They find it easy to access data, you know, to help them better do their jobs. And then speaking to reliability, I mean, we all want reliability, you know. So with reliable, up-to-date data management helps companies to respond more efficiently to market changes and customer needs and demands. On the platform of security, we see data management. With data management, we can protect our organization's data, and of course, from data losses and theft and breach, you know, with the help of authentication and encryption tools. You know, a strong data security ensures that vital company information is backed up, you know, and retrievable, you know, from the primary sources. Yeah. Even when it becomes unavailable. And then we move on to scalability. So what is scalability in this context and how does it help? So data management allows organizations to effectively scale data and use educationally, you know, with repeated processes. We know people keep calling on these data sources. We have multiple analysts within the organization trying to reach out to these data sources. So it needs to be scalable, you know, to help access and to reduce the unnecessary cost of duplication. I mean, with all of these, I feel like with data management done right, the role it plays in analytics to drive business growth cannot be overemphasized. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonia, for that elaborate answer. So the next question I have for our panelists, this is directed at you, Tausif. So
Okay.
how can organizations, regardless of size, adopt analytics?
So as I mentioned, when you start analytics journey, it's completely like you have different stages of it. It's not about of course, the size of organization definitely matters, but it has to start with two things in mind. One is definitely defining the vision So one is alignment of multiple stakeholders on that this is the need and how do we go about it and how it can affect. So once these three are aligned, then it becomes very easy for any organization to go ahead with it. First is the onboarding of organization on the importance of the data. Second part comes is where they have to understand and identify where is the gap. Like they have to practically understand, okay, if the organization is so big and they have data cluttered everywhere, how do we bring them together to assess and find the gap? If the organization is small, they say, okay, we have ready-made sources, we can start it now. So first is onboarding, second is analyzing and assessing current situation. Third is building plan. Now, building the plan is completely dependent on the budget, completely dependent on the kind of personnel we have. Do we have a team? Do we have budget for it? Do we have right tools for it? Can we spend now? So that all is the part of defining the strategy. Once you have defined that, okay, this is something which we can plan for next year, this is something is good for this year, this is something which you can spend, your strategy is in place. Then comes bringing right people, right technology in and going ahead with implementation. So that's how any organization, irrespective of its size, can go ahead with a data-driven journey. It's quite simple. Get onboarded, get everybody to be onboarded in terms of being data-driven. Then come and assess where do you stand, identify technology and business gap, build a strategy which is driven by budget, which is driven by ROI, choose the best of the breed technologies which are readily available, choose build versus buy, dependent on completely on company strategy. And final is deploy in an agile manner. That's the answer, what I would say for any organization to be a data driven.
Okay, thank you very much, Tausif. Thank you for that answer. And the next person I'll be directing the question to is Arthur. So please, Arthur, if you could start off with like a brief introduction of yourself before you answer the question. Your question is, how has business scaled through difficult times with the aid of analytics? That's directed at Arthur. So if you could introduce yourself briefly, Arthur. I don't think we've really spoken with you yet. We've just spoken with Antonia and Tausif. So the floor is yours, Arthur.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Arthur Mukuba, and thanks again, Pamela, for this opportunity. So I'm currently based in South Africa, and then I'm working for a telco industry. Well, obviously, I'm in the data analytics actually. It is the buzzword, you know, it is how we do business. It is how we penetrate the market and build solutions actually to our markets. So, and thanks for the invite, I must say. So just maybe just to indicate in terms of how the business, I mean, in terms of in the African context, how can the business scale through the difficult times with the aid of analytics? I mean, it is rather safe to say, I mean, we're living in a modern data intensive times where any piece of data could sway decision making. I mean, companies are faced with large volumes of data that they're capturing, that they're gathering on a daily basis. And this is growing exponentially. But the biggest challenge again is that what are we deriving from this information that we're gathering, which is data that we're gathering? What are the insights that we're gathering? Are we really increasing or growing in terms of our market? Our decision-making abilities, is it agile now? And how then do we secure this information in terms of whenever we've already gathered this information? And I must say, I mean, to my colleagues now, Tausif as well as Antonia, they've already shed some light in terms of, obviously, where does it all begin? And then who is paid? And the fact that actually all of us actually in any company or in any industry within the market can be able to work with data because data analytics, because that's the way of going. But I think what's more important, I think, with analytics again, is what can it offer once it is being employed properly. I mean, I wouldn't take any word that Tausif has already indicated and Antonia. But what's more important is that we are really organizing the employing business analytics to make data-driven decisions. And how is this helping them? I mean, it optimize and help them to automate their processes, understanding the specific products and the result that they're achieving, explore more effective business processes, and even predicting the likelihood of certain results. And again, this further again allows them to be proactive in terms of decision making. which gives them again the whole value chain of their system actually can easily be automated. And this obviously brings about efficiency. But I rather give it, from moving away from a bit of a jargons in terms of the whole terms of data analytics, as well as Internet of Things, big data, machine learning. But I think maybe just a classic example that just to indicate exactly how can business analytics actually improve efficiency, processes, and automation within the business. Basically in South Africa, the classic example is the banking industry, whereby, what has been happening actually, in order to allow for easy access to all their customers actually, the banks, they normally develop or build or lease or rent properties across the country or across any area of their operations where they do have a footprint. So obviously some of the few things that they will incur is the costing of buildings, the costing of the rents and the likes. And all those things actually, they were costing so much. But obviously now with the analytics actually, it just helped them so much because they've created a seamless automated system. One of the things that they've done actually, we've seen, in the past 5-6 years ago, banking actually closing most of their branches that were based in the townships, in the small urban areas, in the urban areas. And when they've closed this, their banking systems actually in terms of the branches, they came with an automated systems whereby now there is more self-service, whereby customers actually can spend less time inside the banking buildings, but more on the self-service, meaning that you have the internet banking as one of them, as well as the ATM, which is your automated teller machine, where a customer can be able to interact with a machine and be able to derive a result. And those things actually, they were more influenced by data analytics, what information that they're having, because the banks on its own, they are capturing so much data on the daily basis. But then how do they improve their systems? How do they automate their systems and increase in terms of their value chain on how they deliver on their things? And over and above that, again, we've seen that data analytics actually is helping organizations or many organizations to gain insights on what's happening in the market, the trends. I think something that Tausif has already indicated was obviously the customer preference, the trends, how it's being gathered actually by data that is being collected on each and every touch point. And this obviously is an example of such actually we've seen in the telco space, which is a telecommunication space, whereby one of the products that we have to come up with actually, it was more to do with they call it a voice and data zoning. So being able to understand exactly where do we have to put more capabilities of our network, where there are more customers. So most people actually, if you think about the structure of African continent or countries in Africa, what we normally say is that you find that you stay in a rural area and you work in urban areas. So you do commute on a daily basis. So what has happened actually is that what we see with the telecommunication space actually, gaining the essential business insights was that actually they could be able to understand that we don't need to deploy so much of your infrastructure in the areas where there is less use of that infrastructure. So you literally just zone it in terms of saying that where there is more of data intensive areas where people are working more, let's deploy more of our strength there. And that is really helps. And you see that actually it even further reduces the risk. And you see that actually most of the business actually they manage to scale up based on this kind of things. And then obviously now with the COVID-19 actually, it has really fast-tracked or fast-tracked actually the process of digital migration, where now everything that we are doing actually is within the digital space. We're seeing one of them being obviously the access to education. How do the learners be able to access the education and such forth? So these are some of the things that you can see that data analytics actually is playing a very pivotal role in terms of moving around organization and scaling up the business actually to make sure that the business actually they remain sustainable and obviously aligned to what the future will look like. Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you very, very much, Arthur. So next on my list, I have a question, and this question is directed at Tausif. So just to rerun things a bit, Tausif, if you don't mind introducing yourself again, for people that are just joining us. And your question is, what should be the key strategy for driving the data analytics journey within an organization? Yes, I know you spoke about this earlier, but it would be nice to like elaborate on it so people that are just joining us could pick up on that. So thank you, Tausif. Hello, Tausif, are you with us? I think you're muted.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. So hi, everybody. Again, I'm Tausif. I head big data analytics for Spire. We help organization to build data-driven culture. In short, we are based out of Dubai, so we take care of all EMEA as in the culture, and we tap into all of the countries. Now the question is how organization can go about being data-driven. What is the key strategy they should adopt? So I've worked with a lot of organizations, and the maturity level of data is quite different in different apps. So as our panelist said, some organizations are quite advanced. So let's say telcos, the air industry, as well as the banking. These are like early adopters. Then there are still the organizations which are still trying to adopt to data culture. What is the key thing? It doesn't mean that the early adopters have the best strategy, and neither it means the people who are just going to start with the data journey cannot quickly go about their data journey. So the most important thing is the onboarding part of it. So many a times it has been found that people do data just for making sure that, okay, their operations is fine. They invest in data because they feel, okay, we can just look at certain numbers. The link between data and business, or the bridge between data and business, is always missing. They don't really collaborate in a way where business is completely driven by data. So any organization which has to be data driven, or let's say have a strategy around data, should start changing the mentality. That's where the leadership is very important. You would like the leadership to be onboarded in such a way that they invest and they believe that data is the key for them to be business driven, or let's say to make more profit, to make more revenue. So I'll give an example let's take an example of Amazon. What Jeff Bezos did is like, okay, let's look at people and just look at the data. So for them, they are treating people as data, right? For them, let's say Tausif is just a guy sitting in Dubai, or let's say they know my marital status, they'll talk about my relations. They know me, right? They haven't seen me, they don't know me in person, but my data exists. And what they do is a profile out of me. And they know that the more they know about me, the more they will be able to sell and make more profit. Similarly, the belief which existed during the initiation of Amazon helped them to grow something as a giant within short span of time. So if you ask me, the key strategy is like onboarding the business people. That's the hardest part. But if right now the awareness and enablement, right now, this is also one of the sessions where people are getting enabled that how data is important. If that's done, the second part comes is the strategy. Strategy nowadays, it's kind of a word which is like white labeled, or I would say misunderstood in a many ways. Let's say like when people talk about strategy, it's like bring in some top five, big five, and ask them to build strategy. No, strategy should be core ingredient for an organization. It should be something which resides in an organization. Of course, you can take best practices from outside, but inside the organization, you should have a culture of being data driven. Means the smallest of your employees should think about taking a small step should be based on fact and information. You talk about fact and information when you start talking about taking decision. So second would be a strategy which is from a top to bottom with data associated with all your departments, all your verticals. The final thing is implementation. See, data implementations are sometimes successful, sometimes not. Sometimes the analytics works out, sometimes it doesn't. You need patience over a period of time. You definitely need more investment. So it should be more agile, more flexible. So I'll give an example. Many of the data warehouse adoptions which are being done, or let's say data lake adoption, which have been done in the last 3 to 5 years across Dubai also, in MENA region, 60 to 70% of them failed. Because there is no perfect way to go about a data lake, right? There was no perfect technology to fit in. So it's a combination of two things, right? People, the combination of technology, and then there is combination of like making it collaboratively work together. So people is more about culture, more about onboarding. Then there is technology. You have to choose the best fit, choose the way it has to fit you well. And then definitely you have to collaboratively go together. Let's talk about telco. Telco collects unlimited data. Imagine that every time you're walking on a road, your location is getting sent to a telco, right? Imagine you're making a call, the data is sent. The moment you're texting something, the data is sent. You're driving a car, your data is sent, right? So the amount of data generated per millisecond in telco is humongous. Even if you go outside of the country, you're still generating data. So you're generating data, but what happens now? You say, I want to be a data driven. I'll give you an example what telco can do and what we have done for one of our. So you're starting to think like, I'm a telecommunication company. I'm interested that next time onwards, when I build a tower for better communication, for better network, I need to make it data driven. I need to make sure that I'm using my facts and information. What we did, and we helped one of our local organization, is we came up with a location area map and density of people. So we were able to analyze the density of people based on location, and then frequent call drops at different location. So we analyze three things: density of people, frequent call drops, and then instead of having a static network tower, what we said and what we suggested was a traveling tower, which could be reallocated based on density of people at area. So let's say like at 6 o'clock, we had huge number of people gathering at certain places, like which is mall, and hence there were more call drops. So to increase the better service, we had these moving towers available at certain location at certain time, which provided better facility. Now, this makes a simple use case, but trust me, the problem started, how do I collect the network information? How do I store it? How do I retrieve it? How do I make analytics on it? And how much accuracy can I achieve with that analytics? So these steps are huge, humongous. So it takes a while, and business was patient with us, and the investment was huge, right? Actually, they could have installed it anywhere, and which would have costed you 100K in terms of dollar, let's say. But then when you want to do it data driven, you want to invest on people and technology, which is more than $500,000, let's say. Does it make sense? Yes. Why? Because business knew that if I did it today good, I might have more than 500 new customers coming every day to my network. So that kind of long vision is very important. And that's how people should go about being data-driven strategy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this answer, Tausif. At least you've given us more insights into the kind of strategy an organization should adopt. So the next question is for Arthur, and this is very interesting because this is focused on Africa. So Arthur, how do you think Africa as a region can embrace the ongoing data revolution? How can Africa embrace the data revolution, which is ongoing? So over to you.
Thanks, Pamela. As you're just asking the question in terms of embracing the data, I'm already thinking of what Tausif was already just was indicated in his first slide, actually, in some of the stats indicating that, how much of data of digital penetration actually Africa we are. As it is now, I'm just looking into the internet world stats that just shows that actually Africa as a whole, actually, we've run about 43% digital penetration. And this just what it means, actually just means that people having access to internet, either be from the laptops, desktops, or just a normal tablets or a smartphone. But further than that, actually, that on its own obviously just shows that Africa actually does have a niche market for data science in addressing social, political, and economical issues in our region. And obviously, if you look into that 43% that I'm referring to now, if you take it 20 years back, actually, which is a 13% increase of exactly how much data or digital penetration has happened, actually, this just shows you that actually innovative solutions for African problems can be better responded by the region collectively in terms of how we do it. And obviously one of them being, how then do we increase the access to digital platforms so that the data that we're referring to actually can be better be collected, be stored, as well as employing right technologies actually to keeping that information. COVID-19 didn't spare anybody. However, it accelerated the need for access to digital platforms than ever before. I mean, digital platforms, they used to be just a luxury, but now we've seen that actually they're becoming more of a necessity. So meaning that, I mean, access to education, health solution, tailor-made entrepreneurship to solve social problems or initiatives through the use of data actually is becoming more and more important. The emergence understanding of the needs and classification of sectors becomes easy and seamless because we're using this available data. But yes, we still have a long way to go, I must say. But the progress that has been realized today, it signifies the improvements and analytical understanding of our markets. But then how does the region then embrace the data analytics in our lifetime? So I've identified 7 items that I think as Africans or as Africa, we need to reinforce, introduce if possible, where there is none. We need to improve where there is some, and we need to deliberately act upon it. It shouldn't be we shouldn't really wishy-washy the matter. We need to really be deliberate in terms of how then do we make sure that actually data analytics actually is embedded in our systems. So I've identified 7 items that I thought they were key in terms of data analytics, especially when we have to embrace the evolution of data analytics in African context. And I think 2 of them or 3 of them have already been indicated by my colleagues, but I won't really dwell on them. I'm just gonna run through them. So one being data availability. What data is available? What do we want to inform? What are the triggers? What are the platforms? What are the channels to collect this data? This will inform us if whatever we are collecting today, actually, it is the relevant information that can inform the future. Do we have the right capacity actually in general in terms of actually storing this data and be able to manipulate this data actually for information decision? But the number 2, talking about sources of data capturing. Where is this data? I mean, we just make a reference now that the telco space, how the information is being collected. Every moment when you're talking, every moment when you're working, the GPS coordinates are on. They're always indicating what you're getting up to. And then now we've already introduced the IoT, which is the Internet of Things, whereby now, just by the face recognition of a person in the specific store, you can already tell exactly what kind of a product you will really appeal to you. And these are the things that we really need to be wary of as Africans in terms of embracing the data analytics. Thirdly is data management, which I think Antonio has already given length and depth of it, which I'm not going to touch into it because it just really explains the entire value chain of data. The practice of collecting, the keeping, and using this data securely, efficiently, and cost effectively. And those are really the ways and the means in which we have to make sure that at least the data is well managed. But obviously, we cannot talk about data management without talking about what are the technologies and tools that are being employed in this region, in our region. Where are the leverages where we can be able to share in making sure that the access to information or access to data actually can be seamless. Of course, it really provides one with competitive advantage. But what's more important though is that we need to find a way of synergies as Africans to make sure that actually the data that we're having actually not only is to resolve issues of the minority, but we need to look into the way of resolving issues that are affecting us within the continent. And we know some of those issues that we're having within the continent. So obviously technology and tools, talking about the equipment and the softwares that are available. Are we going to rely more on the private sector to be able to come with the systems, or the public sector? Is it the one that are going to come back and say, guys, this is what we need to use in order to collect the data? And who's going to really own this data? I mean, it's very interesting that, I mean, when you look into where Facebook started to where it is today, it is very interesting that, I mean, it started as a platform whereby people, they can connect. But I think the owners since realized that actually it goes beyond just collecting data, just being people knowing each other, getting the likes and the nods, but it is more about the data that can be able to inform certain products and market things that are happening within the country. And these are the technology and tools that this company they've been using. So obviously then the fifth thing is the costing and affordability. How much available tools and technology for data capturing, hosting, and further processing would cost us? Do we have the money? Are we building in-house? Are we relying on the international market actually to be able to keep to host this data for us? Because if then we're relying on the international markets actually, then it will be easy again for the international markets again to easily manipulate this data actually that could favor their solutions and the product that they're bringing in the African region. So that's why it's very important that actually internally as Africans, we need to be able to find a way of hosting. I mean, some of the companies now at the moment actually, they're more focusing actually on the cloud hosting, being able to make sure that they can be able to store immense data as much as we can. And then obviously after that, we talk about people and the processes. So when we're talking about the people and the processes, are we asking the question to us that, are we developing the right skills in the African continent? Are we training and employing the right skills? Do we have the further education institutions that are embedding data analytics within and how we do things? Because this is the future of Africa actually on its own. Actually, no longer even the future, it is the now of Africa now, whereby we're saying that now, how then do we get people more that are being employed within the corporates, either public or private institutions actually, being able to be well equipped actually with the data analytics skills, so that at least whenever the data is there actually, we know that not are we gonna just have the data alone, but we can be able to obtain some insights and be able to create some recommendation and be able to drive decision making. And lastly, but not the least, is the research and development. I think this is one of the key elements that we could never understate on its own, because we need to invest more on research and development that will help see Africa realizing its economic impact to the world. Because Africa on its own, it is a niche market. So the more we understand our issues better than any other person. So I think that if we further put more innovations or more investments on research and development, it could really help us to be able to realize that economic and the competitive advantage sooner than later. And I think those 7 items actually could really help actually to kind of like to model an approach and the way in which actually Africa on its own can embrace the data evolution that we are in now, where everything that we are doing, anything that is being said actually can sway a decision. And that was been seen to date. I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Oscar, for that insightful answer. Next question we have. So this is a very interesting question as well. So there's a lot of buzz around machine learning and artificial analytics, yes. So how is machine learning and artificial intelligence changing the business landscape? Yes, I will repeat this question. There's a lot of buzz around machine learning and artificial intelligence. How is machine learning and artificial intelligence changing the business landscape? So this question is directed at you, Antonia. So you could briefly give us an answer to this. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Pamela. I mean, this question is one that is really interesting. So whether we call it innovation or advancements, machine learning, artificial intelligence is here to stay. And we cannot ignore the numerous applications, I mean, in our day-to-day lives across industries. And we just keep seeing it progress from one level to another level. First, it was just looking at the data. Then we're talking about anomaly detection. Now we're talking computer vision. We're talking natural language processing. I mean, across every sector, we see how machine learning and artificial intelligence is getting ingrained in how businesses are run. So just looking at certain businesses and certain sectors, you know, we look at the entertainment sector today and we see how Netflix and Spotify and YouTube and the likes, they're recommending movies and TV shows and music we should listen to. This is artificial intelligence and or machine learning, you know, taking the front seat there. So we've gone past just knowing who would like to watch, we've gone past knowing how many people are watching this to who would like to know it. So we're going into personalized services, you know, where we want to serve you based on what you would like and things we think you would like. So basically getting to know your customer more than they know themselves. We see it again in healthcare, you know, in the healthcare sector, we see how AI is powering systems to help doctors screen images, improve diagnosis of patient care, and just identify high risk. We also see this happening in the financial sector, the way Otto and Tausif mentioned earlier. We're able to predict more who's going to default on a loan. We're able to go into credit scoring and look at how businesses can move away from the traditional way of manually calculating these things or using intuition, and moving to where science and maths is the key to go, is the way to go. And again, we have cybersecurity where AI is on the forefront there, being able to detect attacks and being able to even counter attacks in some cases. And then in the insurance industry, we see underwriting, which traditionally is a very slow process. For those who are very conversant with the insurance sector, you'd agree that underwriting is something that takes a lot of time because of due diligence that has to be done by the company. But we see how analytics is speeding up this process to ensure that this process is becoming more efficient and accurate. I can go on and on just elaborating how machine learning and AI has started changing or is currently changing the business landscape. But since you said briefly, I think I should just stop here. So thank you very much, Pamela.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonia. Thank you very much. Thank you to all our panelists. Right now, I'm just going to take one question from the Q&A. So we have someone that asked, in Nigeria, data analytics has not gained sufficient traction as it should. What strategies can be adopted to give data analytics the required visibility this service requires in this part of the world? Are there businesses or tools that can help achieve this in record time? So I'll let Antonia answer this question.
Okay, thank you, Pamela. So I think this question is in two parts. So the first part speaking to how adoption rate is pretty low here in Nigeria. And the reason for this is because, you need to understand what you stand to gain before you can get into something. And one thing we see is when you start requesting for data from people, they become shy. It's almost like you're coming to see me through and through, and people don't like that. But when you understand the benefits their businesses stand to gain, I think they're just going to jump on it with time. So for the strategies, there's something I like to call there are certain measures that can be put in place. So define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And Tausif spoke on this earlier on, however, not in this light. So for us in Nigeria, how do we ensure that analytics or data analytics gain sufficient traction? Is by businesses embracing what can be done. So what is happening in other climes? So why can't our health sector be like the health sector we're referring to? We already see how cybersecurity is gaining traction here because of attacks. And I think with the advent of COVID-19, we saw a lot of our public sector offices getting into looking at data. And aside from that, even NGOs in Africa here in Nigeria also started adopting it even more compared to what it used to be. And I guess with time, as long as the rest of the world is going forward and we are seeing what can be done with data. We keep putting things out there, and Nigerians are seeing what can be done with data. Hopefully that would help the market, welcome analytics even better. So what tools can be used to achieve this in record time? There are a couple of tools out there in the market that can be used. Black Central, there are 3 for 1. We have a couple of tools that we also use in-house to handle our own analytics, whether business analytics or the data science side of things. So there are a couple of tools out there. There are free tools. We have programming languages. If you're someone who is interested in building, there's R there, there's Python there. You can even move on to more paid tools. We have our own tool, and there are other tools out there. So we can actually reach out to you just to help you. So if you feel your business is struggling in that light, that can actually be resolved even very quickly. So thank you, Pamela.
Okay, thank you very much, Antonia. So I think for this question, Tausif might want to say something about it. So Tausif, if you could just get a brief response from you.
Yeah, small and brief. I'll try to keep it small. So the most important thing about adoption of data It has been, it's like something which started as a revolution, but then later on the countries onboarded themselves to be data driven. For any country, let's say, like we are talking about US, we are putting standards. The presentation is all about technologies like Facebook's, YouTube's, Instagram. These are all US-based companies, so we call them as tier 1 countries where they invest a lot on the data, where the awareness is a lot on the data side. When a country or when a region has to be data driven, there is two things which is primarily very important. And I think so with the digital footprint, especially with the COVID, people have started adopting and listening and understanding the importance of the data. So awareness programs are going to be very critical for all the organization to understand the importance of the data. Secondly, even if they don't understand the importance of data, sooner or later, if they don't invest in data, 5 to 6 years down the line, they will be redundant. They have to be data driven. This is not something which is gonna be a good to have kind of thing. No, as Antonia said, cybersecurity is must have, because kind of threats which are around, you cannot protect yourself if you're not investing. Similarly, if today you don't invest in data, somebody else will, and he will be more competitive, he will be more prepared, he will be more customer centric. So how countries, there's a question now, they have the awareness will come in a year or two, that's fine. But the most important question, even when we are in Dubai, most of times we get asked that, okay, we are still a country which is tier 2 and we want to be tier 1, how we can leapfrog it, how we can move from tier 2 to tier 1 and leapfrog it. It's not like a gradual, we want to just jump into being tier 1, how that can happen. Now that's possible via two ways, right? One is the adoption of cloud. See, what cloud has brought in is like, okay, I have the best in things which is done and I'm making it available, just access it on one click. You don't need to build it, you just need to subscribe it, and you have the best of the technology. So adoption of the cloud is going to be very critical on leapfrogging, because you're saving on money, you're saving on time. It means you're leapfrogging because you're trying to utilize somebody else's experience and best practices which are developed for you just on a click. So that's the second way. So when they ask about which technologies can help, it depends. So let's say like when you are going for home grocery shopping, depending on your new need, you start shopping. Similarly is with the data. Similarly is in terms of technology. So let's say like tomorrow you want to choose how I want to visualize. So there will be best of breed available. If you want to say that I want to store data, there is still best of the breed technologies available. It's just we have to know what's our need. The technology exists. It's not something which has to reinvent itself. It exists. It's just a way. You just need to type in and you can subscribe it. That's how close you are to the technology. It's just the need which has to be generated. And it's the amount of awareness which has to come in Nigeria. And I think so like this seminar is one of these seminars which will be multiple times repeated, multiple times held, so that more and more people get aware. And awareness, once it's there, then the revolution is going to come sooner or later.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contribution to Asif. So I just have a final question for Antonia. This was asked earlier, and it is directed at the Nigerian market. So Tonia, someone would like to know how telcos and ISPs within Nigeria collect data from its consumers.
Okay, so thank you. How telcos and ISPs collect data from its consumers. So there are already tools in place. I mean, if you have a mobile device and you're subscribed to one of these telcos, what happens is that they can get information from your system. I mean, there are actually tools. I'm not going to start listing out tools of how they get data from you, but because you're subscribed to them, I mean, they can read your phone's data, they can get such information, only what they need. There's data privacy out there, so nobody's going about scraping what they shouldn't be scraping. So there are tools they use that they've embedded into their own processes that helps them to get such data. So I wouldn't start to say they use tool A or they use tool, because that wouldn't be necessary here. And from one telco to another telco, it's a big difference. Even within Nigeria here, from telco A to telco B, how they handle their data, how they get their data, even up to call records is a bit different, so I can't tell you there's a tool or this is the tool they use, because I don't think that would be necessary. But general tools that are used within the ISP and telco space, like what Tausif answered earlier, we have the Talent. So Talent is one tool that is used basically because it's a very good ETL tool. So extract, transform, load is a tool that helps you to pull data from multiple sources and store it somewhere, so that is something. And I also know a couple of telcos build these things themselves in-house. So they have such expertise and they build their own custom tools to get data from both feature phones and our own smartphones, as we like to call it these days. So they can actually get data from such data sources.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Antonia. Thank you for that answer. So moving on, it's been a very insightful session. We've had experts from various sectors like we promised. So I'd like to thank everyone, both the members of the audience that made out time to attend this webinar. I'd like to thank all our panelists in person. I'd like to thank Author that participated. I'd like to thank Tausif, and I'd also like to thank Antonia. Thank you very much for putting this together, and to the audience, thank you again. We look forward to more sessions like these, and we would also like to hear from members of the audience. So this has been very insightful. So thank you very much, everybody, for making our time to attend.
Thank you, Pamela.
Okay. So I think that's all for today. So thank you, guys. Thank you. Till next time.